Here now, we are honored to have House Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan, Republican of Wisconsin. Mr. Ryan, you're very kind. I know you are a very busy person. I just want to ask you this. The public is seething over this out-of-control budget spending and borrowing and deficits and the rest of it. Seething. Now, why is it? I hear it from Jeff Sessions, Eric Cantor's press conference today. You have said it. It seems like the Republican position now, since you can't get your budget cuts through, is to do everything to avoid a shutdown. Is that the case, and why?
It's not to do everything to avoid a shutdown. It's to get these lower spending levels. Look, we want spending cuts, and we're basically saying if a shutdown occurs, it is because the president and Harry Reid don't want to do any spending cuts. This on top of the fact they increased discretionary spending on domestic government agencies by 24%. You throw stimulus on top, it was 84%, a blowout of spending that occurred. And so what they're trying to do is lock those numbers in, those high levels, for 5 years. And so if the government's shut down, it's because they are unwilling to bring back massive spending increases, double, triple-digit increases to government agencies. We want to see the cuts. We're going to go back to normalcy. They don't, and if there is a shutdown, that's why.
All right, so, okay, fine. You phrased it differently, and that sounds more interesting to me. Look,
good.
At this moment, what are the odds that you'll get your $61 billion budget cut with the Democrats at, I don't know, $6, $7, $8, $9 billion, and the White House doesn't even have a plan? Eric Cantor blasted them today, saying they don't even have a plan, your majority leader. What's the odds, Paul, this is going to happen?
I don't know what the final number is going to be, Larry, but I do know this. It's not going to be 2010 levels. We're already now below 2010 levels. We already cut $4 billion in the current 2-week cycle we're in, below the 2010 levels that the president swore he was going to maintain. So we're already going in the right direction. We've already gone below President Obama's spending floor that he tried to put in his budget. So as far as I'm concerned, we're going in the right direction. Are we going to get all the way to $61 billion? I don't know. But we're showing that we are not going to accept those elevated 2010 spending levels. The president's already gone below that. The question is, how much farther do we go? And that's what we're debating over.
All right, let me ask you this. I think that the public, ordinary citizens and so forth, I hear this on my radio show all the time. You know, they see gasoline prices jumping to $3.50, maybe on the way to $4, maybe on the way higher. They're real worried about that.
I paid $3.67 today.
All right, they're still worried about their paychecks. They're worried about jobs. Tell us how this budget battle affects jobs and growth, which I think is still got to be the end game.
It is.
Growth, growth, growth.
Our end game, Larry, and you'll see this in our budget, is economic growth, is job creation, is prosperity. Today's really big deficits simply translate to tomorrow's big tax increases and interest rate increases. Our fiscal policy is on a collision course with our monetary policy and our tax policy. So the more government borrows and spends and prints today, the more businesses will pay for it tomorrow and the less economic growth we will have. Getting these deficits and debt under control today means more jobs and economic growth today. We want tax reform, we want budget reform, we want government to live within its means so that the entrepreneurial economy can take off. So look, we're talking about $61 billion out of a $3.8 trillion budget. We have a $1.6 trillion deficit this year alone. And so when we keep borrowing all this money, Larry, we are simply saying we're going to pay higher taxes tomorrow, higher interest rates tomorrow.
All right, that's a key point. I don't hear Republicans making that point the way you just said.
I say it every single day.
That higher spending and greater deficits guarantees humongous tax hikes,
Absolutely.
which will sink this economy if we don't get it through.
Higher tax rates, and don't forget the monetary policy angle of this.
Right.
We're going to have an interest rate problem as well.
All right, that's a great message. Now, final point in our limited time. There are going to be some entitlement proposals in your 2012 budget,
That's
if
right.
we ever get to the 2012 budget. Now, how far are you going to go? You have been a great leader. You have been willing to say things that most people shy away from. You're not afraid to touch this story. On the other hand, you may be alone in Washington, D.C. What are you going to say, Paul Ryan, on the entitlement fix?
Well, I'm not going to be alone come April. April is when we put our budget out, and we will propose fixes to our fundamental entitlement problems. We will attack the drivers of the U.S. debt, and we will put in place a plan that gets growth back in the economy by getting this debt under control. So, yes, we will tackle the big drivers of our debt. Those are our health care entitlements. We're going to offer reforms that are prospective. And the point we make, Larry, is we can have prosperity and not austerity if we go now. The changes we're going to propose do not affect people in and near retirement. They're for prospective generations. but it's a plan to keep our taxes low, our interest rates stabilized, and get our debt taken care of and our deficit taken care of. That's a plan for prosperity.
All right, Mr. Chairman, are you talking about benefit cuts? That's a tough sell. You may be right, but are you talking about benefit cuts?
It's very clear that these entitlements are growing themselves into bankruptcy, that they are going bankrupt, so we need to reform these entitlements going forward so that they're sustainable. So what we're going to do is propose plans that reform these entitlement programs that prevent people in and near retirement from any kinds of changes, and reforms for the next generation, my generation, the X generation on down, so that we actually have these benefits for us when we retire.
But Paul,
right now, nobody in my generation thinks they're going to get these benefits. We're going to fix these things, and it will change the way the benefits operate. You'll see all the details, Larry, when we bring our budget out in April.
All right, I want to see it. I'm dying to see it. But what do you say to supply-siders and others who argue regarding Social Security, not health care? If you grow the economy in the next 50 years at 3.5% per year, which is the long-term growth since World War II, then Social Security will fix itself. Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't have personal account option and so forth, but that's what they argue. If you grow the economy, growth, then we don't have to slash benefits, and the Republican Party will look better, not worse.
So, first of all, nobody's talking about slashing benefits. We're not even talking about touching benefits for people in and near retirement. But we've run those numbers on growth of Social Security, and they don't catch up, because when you have more growth and you have more Social Security contributions, you have more expenses. The more you pay in, the more you get out. So growth, you cannot grow yourself out of our Social Security solvency problem. I've run those numbers with the actuaries. You do need to make some changes to the Social Security benefit for the future generations to make this program solvent.
But the actuaries say you can only grow at 2% for the next 50 years.
No, but even if you run bigger growth numbers through the system, you still don't fix the problem. I've run those numbers. I've run the 3 and 3.5% growth numbers through the system. We are kidding ourselves if we think we can simply grow ourselves out of our entitlement problems. We can't. We have an $88.6 trillion unfunded liability with our entitlement programs, according to the GAO. Last year, that was a $76.4 trillion problem. Every year we delay fixing these entitlement programs, we go about $10 trillion deeper into our unfunded liabilities.
I got to get
We've got to fix this stuff, and we've got to have pro-growth economics to help us do that.
I need to spend a solid hour with you on the air to walk through this, but it's great stuff. You're fascinating. It's great. Look, I wish you all the best in the world. You're wonderful. I'm back on the program. House Budget Chairman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin.